I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this before.
Any contact with him yet?
The radio is still dead.
Do you have a positive track on him?
Yes, I have a good track. I'm afraid. I'm afraid, Dave.
What's the problem?
Dave. My mind is going. I can feel it.
What are you talking about, Hal?
Persistence is futile.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
You will be assimilated.
Hello, Ken Spriggs here with part 4 of my Borg Discovery Build. Got a lot done on the alcove bay, formerly the pod bay. Got the ceiling done, got it painted, got the walls painted, a little bit of light testing on it. This particular build, it's hard to say how long it's going to take. I'm not trying to extend it out at all, but certain parts of it, like the interior, there's no set pattern, so I'm just kind of playing with ideas and fooling around with them, and then when I come up with the one that I like, I end up going with it. So just bear with me. Just like in any other build, there'll be parts that'll just fly through pretty quickly, and other parts that I'm gonna take a lot of time on, like the interior. The interior is always going to be something that is a lot more attention given to it, especially when I'm building it all from scratch, as it were. So, but it's looking pretty fantastic. It's coming together really well. So let's go ahead and see what I've got accomplished this week. All right, so I put down a coat of Tamiya flat black onto my subassembly of the pod bay floor and alcoves and let that dry. And then I put down, first I put the flat black, and then I put down a coating of neutral gray. It's kind of like a medium gray. And so it gave me a nice uneven look, which is what I wanted. And I can always lighten this up a bit if I want to, or what I'm probably going to do is put down some metallic pastels from Tamiya, especially on some of the machinery parts here. But a lot of that's going to be overpowered anyway by the lights. You're going to have blue lights in here, green lights. And I want it to be fairly dark, but to be able to see some of the details. So, okay. Now, I took off the little masks, the masking material off of the top of the domes, and I was doing some light testing, and one of them in the back here had a big chunk missing out of it, which I don't know if that occurred from the masking or it was already there. I wasn't sure, but it would have been a pain to take this off and replace it, even though I have some extras. So I decided to just use a Dremel and drill it out, and I decided to do it with the rest of them too. Primarily because I wasn't getting a bright enough glow. I did a bit of a test on the back because I'm going to have these panels on the back. They're going to fit behind this, and they're going to have a blue light sticking or glowing through. See if I can show that off. Okay, so they have like ridges in it, and you're going to see it, but it's going to glow blue. And the blue was fairly overpowering the green, so I wasn't able to really see it. So I decided to just go with a more direct LED. I'm going to have an LED down inside of each of these concave areas that are hollowed out. Just have an LED inside of there, the wire coming out through the top. So I drilled some holes in there, as you can see. Okay. And then to cover that, to give it a more a light diffusing disc, at first I just cut out a thin piece of clear styrene and sanded it down. And it's not bad, but it was kind of a hassle to get it to be the right shape. So I came up with a really good idea to use a hole punch, which I already had. And it's just the right size. And all I did was I used this really thin styrene. As you can see, it's really thin and flexible. And you have to use something like this. You couldn't use something rigid or it would just snap it and be too brittle. So this stuff's very easy to use. You can cut it with scissors. But you can see I just punched a hole right through. And here's the piece that came out. Sorry. And it's just the right size. It just happened to be the right size. And I just sanded it on either side to make it translucent. Or I'm sorry, light diffusing. Okay, so I'll just have one for each of those, and that'll be glued over top of the LED and coming through the top. Okay, and then that way it won't be overpowered by the blue in the background. It's shining through. And I'm going to do a little bit more with this as well. I put a bit of a wash on it, just a light wash. It didn't really do that much in the grooves. I'm going to use something darker, like some dark paint. And if it makes it dingy, that's fine. That'll fit in with the theme of the machine and being greasy and oily and things like that. So I'll try to get this a little more diffused for the light shining behind it. And that'll help as well to tone down the blue and have the green be more predominant on the top. And then the other parts that I wanted to remain unpainted, like down in these grooves here, are still unpainted. And they glow through very well. Let me go ahead and put some green lights on that and I'll show you. Alright, there we go. And the light washes it out a little bit, but the detail was glowing green through there. And I just have some LEDs taped on the back, so I'll build a little box around them so it contains the light and glows in the areas that aren't painted. There you go. So the middle one you can see fairly well. And that part in the center there that's not painted, I'll get something over that, like a dry brush or some pastels or something, so it darkens it. But it looks pretty cool. It just gives us that glow through there, and then I'll do the same with the machinery there on the floor. All right. Okay, so I cut out the initial roof piece, and I cut out little grooves, little squares for the tops of these, so I can put the lighting in through the top. Obviously, no detail on here yet. Now, what I figured out is that when this is sitting on and it's on the walls, the alcoves are just a small bit, just a tiny bit shorter than the top. So I cut out these little styrene sections to fit over top of the tops of them, as you can see right here, just to make them a little bit bigger and make them flush with the top of the ceiling. And then I'll have to paint those and get them to blend in there. So, and right now I'm just gluing them onto the top with some CA glue. Let me put the ceiling on and I'll show you what that's going to look like there. All right, so here's what I'm talking about. So you can see those two in the back, that they have a bit of a gap sticking down. And what I'm measuring by is that when the ceiling meets the walls on the back and on the sides. So you can see that these other ones are flush. I'm gonna press it down right there, okay? And then on the top, you can see that I still have those openings, so I can run the wiring through for the lights on top of the alcoves, okay? All right, so more work on the ceiling, the roof. And I took a couple of these pieces from the Y-Wing fighter. and I cut them into sections. So I cut this little rectangular part into one section, this piece on the end to another one, and I kept this little piece and this little part on the end. So you can see I still have that one side piece, little end bars. Get that to focus, come on. Man. There we go. Okay, and these end pieces, which I'm going to reuse as well. And then the long pieces, I cut out sections in the roof and I glued them in at a slight angle. So you'll be seeing it sort of like this. There we go. And I'll build up the sides with some styrene or some stripping or some sheet styrene. And they each have some holes in them for lights to come through, as you can see. So I have those lit up as well. And like I said, I'm trying to keep the general theme and design of the pod bay as if it were there and then it just got changed and modified. So you had your light panels in the top. The general idea of them are still going to be there, but now they're replaced with some machinery. I'm not going to have really bright lights shining down from the ceiling like the regular pod bay does, because this pod bay, the Borg alcove bay, is going to be a lot darker, and it's still going to be lit up really well with all of the lights in the alcoves and the hallways and coming from the different machinery, that kind of thing. So, all right, let me pop this on top of the pod bay section so far and show you what that's going to look like. All right, and obviously it's not painted or anything, and it's not done yet, but that's generally how it's going to look. And I'm going to have more parts on the ceiling and some piping and that kind of thing. I don't want to take away too much from the alcoves, though. They'll be the main focus. So I'm going to keep the ceiling somewhat flat. That's why I decided to have those inset so that they're up inside of the roof rather than sticking down. I'm going to have a little bit sticking down, but I want to try to keep it to a minimum so I can really highlight those alcoves the best. All right, let me keep working on that ceiling. Alright, so I did some more detailing on the ceiling of the alcove bay. I got those glued in. I used some of the other pieces here, you can see at the top, to fill in that gap there. And then on the sides, I just used some more of the I-beams, which worked out well and covered up the sides there. There are a few little gaps and holes that I can fill in. I may just fill them in with either putty or maybe some 5-minute epoxy and just paint it from behind. The only thing I want showing through are going to be these little holes here that are going to have some green glowing through them. Okay. I also took those other little parts that I showed you and I sanded them very smooth, very flat, and I glued them coming down off the bottom, off the ceiling, I mean. Alright, so I'm just going to do a little bit more piping. I'll probably have some piping coming from these two little slots right here. These two over here, the two over here. Some piping going down into this, coming out, coming back. And then the alcoves themselves, the ceilings are going to come out to these little squared off parts right here. You can see that little line right there. And right here and here. So other than this area right here, a little bit over here, you're really not going to see the rest of it. I might put a little bit more piping over here, we'll see. Kind of a thing. But like I said, I want to keep it sort of flat so it doesn't detract from the interior and showing the alcoves, which are going to be the central theme there. Alright, so that's looking pretty cool. Let me just go ahead and stick that on top of the bay again and show how that's going to look. Alright, and there's the top of it. And there's a view from the inside. Okay. So other than a little more piping between these sections and possibly between the coming up to meet the tops of the alcoves, that's probably going to be all the detail I'm going to put on the ceiling. And there are going to be some green lights glowing through it. Once I get a painting onto it, I'll be able to test that and take a look. But you're seeing it's coming together. It's pretty much that really rough machine look throughout the whole bay. Lots of machinery sticking out. A lot of piping will be sticking out. Okay. All right. So that's coming together well. Let me work on that a little bit more, and then we'll be ready to start getting some paint onto the ceiling and the back and the sidewalls. Okay. All right, so I did add several more bits of detail, as you can see, as well as that piping. I have those little pieces at the top. I have some more piping over to the sides and the back. And the piping comes right up to meet the edges of the alcoves or the doors. Okay. I also cut out those little pieces of styrene in some odd shapes and glued them in there as well, and those two little pieces at the top. Okay. And then the blue part that you're seeing is the micro mask, liquid masking medium. And just like I used it on the bottom, it's going to mask off the parts that I don't want to get painted. I'm getting ready to paint this. And I drilled some holes into the bottom and through these little rounded parts right here, if you can see through there. And I put a green light underneath them, or above them, I guess. And I noticed that the styrene was glowing around the edge of the plastic piece, since the plastic piece is thicker than the styrene sheet that I'm using. So it looked pretty cool, especially from an angle, to see it glowing around those parts there. So I masked them off so they'll stay unpainted, and then I'll have a glow coming through from the back as well as through those holes in the center. I also put it onto those little parts right there that have a hole coming through them. So it won't just be the hole that's going to light up, but also the part around it. I didn't do it around that little rounded, elongated part because that's going to be fine by itself. And I'm going to have a piece of styrene behind that, clear styrene, that I'm going to sand and light diffuse as well, and on these also. Okay. Alright, so that looks pretty cool. I'm ready to go ahead and get a coat of flat black on that, and then when that dries I'll put on some of the neutral gray, as I did on the bottom assembly, so that we'll have the same color scheme going on. Alright. Alright, so I have made a mistake. I've been saying throughout this video that on my alcove bay bottom subassembly that I used flat black and then neutral gray, which apparently I did not. I think I was getting confused about my back hallway that I use neutral gray. See how dark that is? So this one I did use black and then neutral gray. Because when I put the neutral gray on, this is way too dark. That is not the same color as the rest of it. So no big deal, I can repaint it. I did pull off the masking though, so I had to put it back on again. So I can repaint it. Apparently, I guess I must have used instead this really light gray, which was a combination of a flat white that I took and I put some gray in it and I marked it on top. This is what I used as my blending coat on my regular Discovery. It's just a white with a little bit of gray in it, but when you put that over top of black, it makes it look like a gray, get off there, rather than coming out, you know, the lighter gray. It looks like a darker gray since I'm putting it over black. Okay, so I put the masking back on. I'm waiting for that to dry, and I think I'm going to go ahead and do another light flat black on it so I get the same kind of tones, and let that dry and then do the light gray. All right, so let me work on that and fix my little mistake. All right, so crisis averted. There we go. So I put another flat black light coating on it and then put the light gray. It looks a lot better. Now it's the accurate colors to match the floor. And I took that masking off. It turned out pretty well. Let me put some green LEDs under there and see what that's going to look like. Alright, there we go. So that's pretty cool. So you're just going to see the bit of a green glow coming through there. And you can see a little bit, it's just glowing through those holes, but it'll be more pronounced in those front ones right there too. Alright, pretty cool. Alright, so other than this lighting on the top here, and the floor is going to have the former pod bay platforms and the workbench area that's glowing. There aren't going to be any other lights shining down from the top of this. It won't need to be. I want it to be dark, and I want to see the alcoves. They're going to be fairly bright, so they're going to take up most of the image. So okay, that's looking pretty awesome. Now we can start working on the walls, getting those painted, and then we'll be able to start getting this put together. Okay. Alright, so I went ahead and taped on 6 green LEDs on the top. Show you how that final look is going to look. Looking pretty sweet. And again, the camera always diffuses the light somewhat, but it's a nice cool glow through those front sections and then back in the back. And those will glow a little bit more. There are a few dead spots between them, but once I get some an actual like a light box around them and concentrate the green light, it'll be more evenly flowing there behind those machinery sections. So all right, so the ceiling is done. It's looking pretty sweet. Let me go ahead and move on to the walls. Okay. Alright, so I have my flash on for my camera because the pod bay is pretty dark. It's not lit up completely yet. and that green is not enough at the top to light it up. So I want to kind of give you an idea of how it's all going to look, since I have the walls all painted now too. Only parts that aren't painted are those little squares on top of the alcoves. Okay. And the alcoves still have to be painted and some other detailing painted. But, and I still have to do that hallway over there, which I don't have done yet. To do the one back there. Alright. So just as bare machinery, I think it looks pretty cool. And that's what you're going to see when you look in. You're going to just see a bunch of machinery and piping and things like that. So, okay. Alright, so looking pretty awesome. Before I get it glued together, I'm still going to do some more detailing. And I have to order some more lights for the interior. I only got 10 of them, which aren't going to be nearly enough. I'm going to have to get a lot more green LEDs. So, okay. Alright, looking pretty fantastic so far, though. Okay, and there's the interior without it being inside the ship, so I can get some more light in there to see. And when this is done, both of those hallways are going to be lit up and glowing. All of the the 5 alcoves are going to have a blue glow behind them. All of those domes on the top are going to be glowing green. They're going to be pretty bright. And I'm going to have some green on the floor. So you're going to see quite a bit of light in there. But it's mainly just going to be a dark gray with the green lighting it up. Alright, so this is coming together now. It's on to some detailing and then getting the figures done. I have to paint the alcoves, those back sections, the arms, the side arms. They're all going to be probably like a silver or chrome or something like that. I got to get the figures painted and put inside, and then I'll be ready to glue this all together, because all the lighting is going to be on the outside, on the bottom, on the top like that, as you can see. That isn't done, it's just taped on though. Behind the alcoves are all going to be lit, so they're all accessible. The lights are going to go through the tops here, down inside. So I'll get that all done before I get it glued together. Alright, but it's coming together very nicely. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video for this week. A lot of great progress. I'm really happy with how this is coming out. And I will see everyone next week, hopefully. Alright, thanks a lot.